Hungary, Hungary, Hungary. Bruh, you did not fail to deliver. Formula 1 in 2021 has just been spectacular, and what a way to round out the first half of the season than with an absolute classic at the Hungaroring. There's a lot to be discussed, so without any further ado, here are my winners and losers from the Hungarian Grand Prix. Winners: Esteban, Ocon and Fernando Alonso. I still can't put into words just how crazy this result is. Out of every driver who hadn't won a race yet up to this point, I doubt many would have put money on Esteban Ocon being the man to do it. This man was probably the most criticised driver of 2020, which I didn't really understand, given how it was his first season back after a sabbatical. Being Danny Rick's teammate also didn't do him any favours, as the Australian was performing at a very high level. But as the season progressed, he only got better and better, and managed to achieve a brilliant P2 at the Sakir Grand Prix. He went on to one up his career best finish yesterday by winning the Hungarian Grand Prix. Watching his onboard at the start of the race reminded me a lot of this iconic McQueen scene from Cars. He kept his nose out of all the carnage, and the track just opened up for him. Before the restart, Ocon inherited the lead from Hamilton, who was the only driver to not come into the pits, and from there, he remained calm and composed under pressure from a four-time world champion to win the first race of his career. Now, as with any race win in Formula 1, there were a number of factors that contributed to the victory. First was Vettel's pit stop being too slow to perform an undercut, and second was his own pit stop being very good. But in my opinion, the biggest factor was his teammate Fernando Alonso. The Spaniard's defense from Lewis Hamilton in the closing stages was some of the best driving I've ever seen. To hold off a 7-time world champion in a superior car with a softer compound of tyres for so many laps really was incredible. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know I mentioned this already, but Alonso's defending actually reminded me a lot of Mexico 2017. With Hamilton thinking about the championship in both scenarios, Alonso had nothing to lose and simply gave everything and more to prevent Lewis from getting by. It was thrilling to watch these two have an epic battle on track after so many years, and hopefully, Alpine can develop a strong car for 2022 so we can see them fight more often. In the lead up to this season, I thought that this driver pairing would be one of the feistier ones. With Ocon entering his second season with the team and Fernando returning after 2 years out of the sport, I thought there would be a lot of fireworks. But watching them celebrate together after the race proved me otherwise. These two seem to have one of the best working relationships on the grid, and if they continue this way, they can expect more great results in the future. Finally, just another word on Esteban Ocon. This milestone has a pretty amazing story attached to it. Unlike most drivers we see today, the Frenchman came from very humble beginnings. He spent a lot of his childhood living in a caravan with his family to support the expenses of his racing, and the sacrifices his parents made ended up paying off, as he secured the backing needed to make it all the way. To see him now winning a Grand Prix makes that hard journey to get to Formula 1 all the more worth it. Losers: Lance Stroll and Valtteri Bottas. Seeing as these two were the ones who caused all the carnage at turn 1, it's no surprise they count as losers this weekend. Valtteri had a very poor getaway, losing places to Verstappen, Perez and Norris behind, and then ran into the back of the McLaren under braking, leading to a chain reaction of collisions. Stroll couldn't get the car slowed down in time, which saw him collide with Ricciardo and Leclerc. Now in Bottas' case, if you watch the replay, you can see that as Lando was overtaking, he moves right across his front wing, which leads to the Finn losing a lot of downforce in the braking zone. Kinda similar to the Verstappen and Ricciardo incident in Baku 2018. But in this case, the track wasn't dry, making it even harder to control the car under braking. However, he still misjudged the speed at which he was approaching, and so did Stroll. As a result, a lot of people's races were ruined. Lando's point scoring streak of 15 consecutive races came to an end. Sergio Perez also retired. Verstappen's race was compromised due to the heavy damage he suffered from the crash. Leclerc missed out on a great opportunity to score big points, and Daniel Ricciardo was also handicapped due to the damage for the rest of the race. But then again, it did shake things up a lot more, and grant teams lower down the grid an opportunity for a big result. Winners: Williams. Leading on from the last point I made, George Russell and Nicholas Latifi were two of the biggest beneficiaries of all the events that transpired. At the restarts, George was about to inherit the lead of the race before he was told to give back the positions gained in the pit lane. For a while, Nicholas Latifi was running up in third behind Seb and Esteban before losing out to the faster cars behind. But from then on, The only potential threat for the Williams boys was from Verstappen and Ricciardo, who were both carrying damage. So Latifi and Russell came home in P8 and P9 respectively, but were later promoted to 7th and 8th after Vettel's disqualification. More on that later in the video. Williams have been on an upward trajectory over the past couple of years. They went pointless in 2020, and the only reason they scored points in 2019 was thanks to a crazy wet race in Hockenheim. Otherwise, they weren't capable of doing so on performance alone. This year, however, they have consistently been knocking on the door and have finally received their reward. Losers, Red Bull. Now admittedly, Red Bull didn't lose out through any fault of their own, but the turn 1 crash definitely didn't help them at all. Checo immediately retired from the race, and Verstappen suffered too much damage to have any major impact for the rest of the race. But he did manage to bring home a couple of points, even after all that. And may I say, what a superb job Verstappen did to still bring some points home, despite losing so much car performance. One of the keys to winning a championship is damage limitation when things don't go your way. Max was set back early on, but still fought back as much as he possibly could to salvage anything from his race. But after being 32 points ahead in the championship just 2 races ago, he finds himself trailing Hamilton by 8 points going into the summer break. This was the last thing Red Bull would have wanted, as Hamilton and Mercedes now have the upper hand heading into the second half of the season. They won't go down without a fight though, best believe that. I expect Max to come back hungrier than ever in the upcoming races and regain some momentum in this championship battle. Winner, Lewis Hamilton. Now after that first lap, I'm sure many of you thought, that's it, race over, Lewis is taking the win, no question. Well, things weren't as simple as they seemed. Hamilton faced the dilemma of not pitting under the safety car and hoping everybody else followed suit, or coming into the pits and being trapped in his pit box due to other cars passing through. As we know, Mercedes decided to keep him out, but he ended up being the only one on the grid. As soon as the race restarted though, he realized the track was bone dry, and the decision was a mistake. Just when it seemed like it was all sunshine and rainbows, Lewis found himself dead last on lap 5, at a track that is very difficult to overtake on. Nevertheless, he tremendously fought his way back to secure a podium by setting qualifying laps right until the end. After the race, he looked extremely exhausted, but it was well worth the efforts as he was able to regain the championship lead for the first time since the Spanish Grand Prix. For the last little segment, I want to talk about Sebastian Vettel. Now I would include him as a winner as his performance on track was absolutely flawless. He didn't put a foot wrong all race, and had Aston nailed his pit stop, we could have seen Seb take his first win since Singapore 2019. However, after the race, the FIA were only able to sample 0.3 litres of fuel, which didn't meet the required 1 litre. As they were in breach of the technical regulations, this immediately resulted in a disqualification for Vettel, but Aston have appealed the decision as they claim that the car had 1.77 litres of fuel left at the end of the race. At the time of recording, Seb's result has been classified as a DSQ, so the appeal would need to be successful for his P2 to be reinstated. Regardless of the outcome though, in my opinion, Seb drove fantastically well and should take pride in the great job he and Aston Martin did throughout the weekend as a whole. Who were your winners and losers from the Hungarian Grand Prix? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. As always, be sure to like this video if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel with bell notifications to keep up to date with my latest videos in the future. I'll be uploading regularly over the summer break, so you guys don't get bored when there's no racing. Be sure to keep an eye out for videos coming your way in the future, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.